Hello everyone, my name is Jose Mendoza. I'm a computer information systems major and this is my last semester here in Cal State LA. Today we are going to discuss about how to write out numbers in a formal document. There are only two basic rules to writing out using the number formats in a formal document, words and figures. I will explain more in detail about some examples with those, as well as some situations in that give out these exceptions to these rules and how to use them in the actual sentences. So we start off with basically giving out the actual numbers in the formal document. There are, like I said, there are only two basic rules, which is the words and figures. So in examples for words would be like 3 pounds, $5 billion, and 38 years. Examples for figures would be like before 10 days, about $45, 6,000 apples, 5.5 gallons. Now, like I said, there are situations that give out these exceptions to these rules, as well as symbols that actually give the actual value to the actual numbers. So do keep in mind about it. Also, everyone is asking about which one to pick. The answer would be basically the writer's preference. However, choosing these two rules would pretty much give out the writer to prefer one or the other, but they have to keep it consistent. Like I said, there are situations that you would have to use those two methods on the same sentence, document, whatever. One of these situations would be like days and years. So as you can see, you have the actual month, day, and year. So as you can see, you have the actual word, number, number, or number, word, number. Technically, you would also have another method, which would be just pure number, would be the actual month, day, and year. Another example within days and years would be the actual year, or like in this situation, AD 2017. Another example would be if you're making a statement such as like in 2000, that's an example of making a statement. Another example would be like the era, like the 80s and the 20th century. Or in this case, if you want to do it in number format, you can do 1990s or 1990s, whichever one. Like I said, there are symbols that you do need to take account for because they kind of do give out a bit of a meaning. So for example, like this apostrophe, it just gives out like the actual decade, the actual decade, or in the actual year. Also, you have other symbols such as the dollar sign, so $45, the comma also, depending on where it's placed. So for example, in this one you have 6,000, as well as the period that represents decimals, so like 5.5. Another situation would be time of day. So in this case, you have 5 a.m. or the old-fashioned way would be 5 o'clock in the morning. Again, the symbols do give value or meaning to what the actual number is. So if you take this colon off, for example, it would say 500 a.m. Well, of course, there is no such thing as 500 a.m. because there's only 12 numbers, and this would be irrelevant. So saying 5 o'clock a.m. is basically the correct way when making a statement or anything. Another situation would be addresses, where as in you would have something that would be written down as an actual number format, so like 12 3/4 Avenue, or word formats like 2nd Street, or you would have it both ways, which would be 15 2nd Street. Now, there are times that sometimes, like the post office, for example, have a tendency to write it out as an actual word and not a fraction. So this where it gets a little bit hectic, and you would have to say that you would have to give your address that it is actually a fraction and not an actual word. Because sometimes, like I said, post office, for example, they will assume that this is this is legit, and this is not. So you have to keep that in mind. Another example of a situation would be identification numbers. So, for example, when you're writing in a hotel room, which would be like room 9, or television, channel 10. Roads and highways, you would write it as Interstate 5 or the I-5 if you want to keep it short. And also with titles with the same name, so such as like if you have someone like Henry and it's passed down as the 8th person, so you would have the 8th, so in all it would be Henry the 8th. Another situation would be like pages, division, books, and plays. So for example, pages would be like page 25, a division of books like chapter 10, or plays like the act 2, scene 2. Now this one you can actually write it in this method, the old school method, or the modern method, which is writing in numbers. Another situation would be like decimals and percentages. Here you would have like the GPA or the grade point average of 2.5. Now the incorrect method would be saying 25 with the period at the end or the front, because they actually make it do have a significance. I mean, even though it's still included, but it does make a difference if your grade point average was actually like a C plus and not an F. This would actually scare a lot of students if they're not paying attention when it comes to a misplaced decimal point. Another example of using the decimals and percentages would be this one. As you can see, you have a non-scientific percent, such as 14%, where you have the actual number but not the actual symbol. Whereas in here, you have the actual scientific method that uses the actual number and the decimal format. I mean, not the decimal, the percentage format. So it all depends on who you're writing to, as I mentioned before. If you're writing it to just to make a statement or whatever, you would actually give out the non-scientific method, which is saying 14% that has no value or no meaning to it. However, if you're making a statistical or a scientific fact to that document, you would actually have to write down the actual number and the symbol to it. One more example of a situation would be like large round numbers. Obviously, this number of 16,500,000 is a lot to write about, and it kind of gives the reader to not be attracted to it very much. So if you want to keep it short and sweet, you would write it out as 16.5 million. Same thing if you were trying to write out in actual figures or dollar figures. So $5 billion, you can write it down as $5 billion with the dollar sign and the number in the front, but still keep the billion figure as written out as is, and not to have to write out more than 6 figures. Now, there are several ways to write sentences using the numbers in these sentences. We have the commercial writing, legal writing, consistency in series and statistics, writing numbers in the beginning of sentences, and combining figures and words in the same sentences. So for commercial writing, an example would be the bill will not exceed $900. So this is basically saying that it's just $900, that it's not giving an exact amount. It's just saying the bill will not exceed at that amount. Legal writing, however, does require the actual amount in actual number format. So for example, right here, the cost of the damage is $4,000. This is just so that way to keep everything legal and to keep the party with the physical document that's saying the exact amount. Now, you do have consistencies in series and statistics, which there are incorrect methods and there are correct methods. The incorrect methods would be like 3 apples, 1 orange, and 5 bananas. As you can see, it's not consistent. You have 3 apples as the actual word 3, but then you have 1 and 5 as the actual numbers. You either keep it in actual word or actual number. In this example of the correct answer, I put the series in word format. So 3 apples, 1 orange, and 5 bananas. Now, when you're trying to make a statement or sending information about the actual size, you want to keep it consistent to where you have 10. You want to keep the symbols consistent. So, for example, right here, this is the incorrect method. You would have 10 feet, where the feet is the actual symbol worded out, but then you have 9 feet, which has the apostrophe. The reader, if they're reading this whole thing at once, they would assume that this apostrophe would be in actual inches and not by feet. So the correct method would be writing it out as is, 10 feet by 9 feet, or writing it out short and simple, 10 feet by 9 feet with the two apostrophes and the X saying the word by. It's just to keep it short and simple. Of course, we have the writing numbers in beginning of the sentences. The incorrect method is saying the actual percentage and number at the beginning. It doesn't make any sense. You're just basically making like an actual statement. So the correct method would be saying in actual word of both the number and the symbol. So 10% of the classes fail. Now the last thing I'm going to explain to you is combining figures in words in the same sentences. Now, if you hear someone talking about 3 9-year-olds, you would expect three individuals that are 9 years old. However, if you're trying to write it out to someone else in the actual word context, things would be a little bit unclear. So, for example, the incorrect method of saying this is basically saying the class celebrated the birthdays of 9 22-year-olds who are born in the same day. Now, with this would give the reader to read 922 as one number, so they would think that it's 922-year-olds and not 9 individuals. So to clear things up, we changed the number 9 and put it as an actual word to give the actual space saying, okay, the 9 signifies the individuals and not the actual number itself, because they would assume that the 9 and the 22 in the number format is one whole number and not separate, as shown right here. So the correct way to say it is, or to write it out in this case, would be the class celebrated the birthdays of 9 22-year-olds who were born in the same day. So these are some of the examples and rules and situations that are given out when writing in a number format or in a number context using it in a formal document. As I said before, there are only 2 basic rules. The 2 rules would be the word and the numeral formats. However, this will only mean something if they are used in whatever the writer preferred. When the writer prefers to write it in Word or or numbers, they need to keep it consistent. Otherwise, it's not going to flow the way it should be, and it would confuse a lot of readers. Hopefully this video made a lot of sense, and as always, have a good day.